Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod for another edition. You could call it the Did He Score a Try edition. No try or a try for Ardie Savea. We'll get into that very, very soon. And what it kind of means for the rules of rugby and how we move forward from this particular incident. Of course, we've got the semi-finals to come in Super Rugby. The Crusaders against the Blues, the Chiefs against the Brumbies. How could the Brumbies and the Blues tip these two teams up? We'll look into that. South Africa has tapped into the eligibility laws. Of course it was South Africa. Of course it was Rassie Erasmus at the first major nations to tap into that. So we'll have a look into that as well. And some viewer questions from you, including a curly one about the things that the people on this show call players and whether we're calling them by the right descriptions as far as their positions are concerned. So plenty to talk about. Starting off, James Parsons. Thanks for coming back, mate.
Yeah. Geez, we mustn't have pumped Nuggie up enough last week. He's called in late.
He called sick late.
Called in late, but we've brought one of the greats off the bench.
That's right.
Joey Wheeler.
There we go, fellas. Yeah, not quite Nuggie. Far better looking, far better chat. The only forward that's probably got just as big a mouth as a halfback.
And I enjoyed that last week. You kept Jipper on his toes.
He'll be very cocky because obviously the Blues they go one step further in this comp, but they're up against their arch nemesis, and we know what the Crusaders do to them in final time. I'm expecting much of the same.
I respectfully disagree.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right, Jim.
I want you to respectfully disagree with me. I don't think it was a try to Ardie Savea.
Well, I do.
You do?
I just don't know how that couldn't have touched the grass.
But you didn't see it touch the grass?
No, if we'd seen it touch the grass, the TMO could have done its job and overturned the on-field call.
If a tree falls in the woods.
But as soon as he said, I've got no try on the field, I was like, man, this is going to be hard to prove. It's going to be hard to prove. But I still think that just knowing when you're in that position, that would have touched the grass.
Yeah.
But, in terms of the way the questions asked the TMO, like the TMO couldn't have done any more. I couldn't see it myself. But I'm biased. I think it's a try, purely probably because I'm biased. I don't know. Like Justin Harrison was in some of his comments during the commentary. Love you.
Shots fired.
Big fan of yours, still good.
Okay, Joey. Are you with Jipper?
Yeah, I'm with Jipper, mate. Yeah, I just haven't seen that situation, been in that situation several times. You know that ball would have touched the blade of grass without a doubt. It wasn't like there was a full body underneath that ball. There was a hand, and there wasn't conclusive evidence that ball had touched the grass. But I thought I'd seen enough to swing it the other way, but yeah, Jibber nailed it. It was the way it was articulated to the TMO. He needed conclusive evidence. Duplessis, Karevi's hamstrings and quads are probably to blame as well. I didn't get a decent shot on one of that reverse angle, which was probably the best, where I think they missed the pivotal moment where you probably had a really good angle of the ball potentially touching that grass.
Okay, here's my question for you. Ardie Savea is over the line. There's a hand under the ball. His face is up here, so he can't see the ball. He's got guys all around him, so he can't see the ball touch the ground. Can he feel the ball touch 100%. The ground? You think he can?
Yeah. I reckon you do. I don't know, Joey, if you've felt it, but a lot of the time even when you're at the back of the maul, from when I was playing as a hooker, you slide and dive under, and someone always tries to get a hand under or whatever.
Something always there.
And you know when you've got it, and you know when you're going to have to sell it. That's the other thing. Ardie's such a smart player. I just don't think he would have gone over the line without knowing he was going to get that ball down. That you would have known the situation. But I agree with you. Similar to a penalty, you should not be disadvantaged for getting across the line. It's not like a knock-on or, you've had a line out and it's not straight. It's something that is pretty key to our game.
You've put yourself in that position to score a try. You've been held up by essentially a fingertip, and it's held that ball up, and then that's it. That's the game. That's the reset. That's enough for it to be all over and done with. You don't even get the restart of play with the line dropout. So I think they can probably feel a little bit hard done by, because you go on the other foot. Say a team's in the lead and they have a scrum. That scrum collapses and has to be reset. It's not game over. You reset the scrum and you have to play on. So I think there is probably maybe that rule needs to be looked at, that if it is in the 85th minute, like that game, and a team's held up, that you do have to play the line drop out. And if you're good enough to kick the ball out, bounce it out, then that's great, but you can't kick it out on the full. So, maybe we just need to tweak that rule slightly.
The thing is about rugby is there are so many weird things like that no matter how many we eliminate,
there's always going to be something.
It always stays the same. We always end up in that same position. This is not rugby league. This is not cut and dried. It's rugby. And this stuff happens. And at some point, maybe we just got to accept it. We can't perfect the laws of this game because every time we do, something else happens and it makes them imperfect.
Yeah, and I suppose accept that and love the game for what it is. Like, we're not going to be able to change it all, like you say. And it is good, like you say, it's good. There'll be good discussions both sides of the Tasman around this. I'm sure we're being called whinging Kiwis, and that over here we're just talking about how it should have been a try.
Yeah.
Except for you.
Didn't see the ball touch the ground. No try.
Yeah. I think we would have had we not had those impressive quads.
Mate, I'm agnostic. Prove it to me.
Yeah.
Prove it to me.
We'll try and get Ardie on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Ardie, I mean, you talked about Duplessis-Carisi's impressive quads. Are they in a good position without Ardie next year? Because I'm sure part of the reason he got emotional at the end in the conversation was because he's not going to be back with this team for a while. Joey, can they survive well without a guy who's willing to pick him up on his back and take him forward?
In terms of loose forward stocks, they are pretty well placed to deal with losing him. You look at the performance of like a Devin Flanders, Braden Uose is just going from strength to strength, and obviously we know how good Duplessis-Carisi has been this year. So I think they're pretty well placed, Ross, to deal with it. But mate, anytime you're losing, a premium loose forward who is world class, it's going to make a massive dent. Every game he plays in, just so influential. Like, his work rate through the roof. Carry, like you said, carries it back on his team on his back, and it's just super impressive. He'll be missed for sure, but they've got some great depth there. They're really lucky.
Let's not forget Lakai. I think he's got a big future in his show, and he's physically ready for Super Rugby. And then Hayden Bidwell-Curtis is coming back to play for Taranaki, so I do think someone like him with his experience, I don't know if he's going back to Japan or not, but if he is...
Shields is coming in there too, mate. Brad Shields.
So I think that experience factor being covered will be critical as well, because you're not going to be able to replace Ardie, because he is superhuman in terms of what he's achieved, in terms of his rugby smarts and what he does physically. But I think they've definitely got enough there to still be right at the pointy end of the comp next year.
Well, there's always next year for them.
But I think maybe...
That's what it's on for the Islanders too.
Is that on the jerseys? There's always next year? What does it say? Remember 2015?
Next year. No, it's going to be our year next year off. At the moment, it's, there's always next year. Then next year, it's our year. Like the Warriors.
You and the Warriors.
But that's what the Blues fans have been saying for a long time too, Ross. It's our year next year. It's our year this year.
Yeah. It's our week this week.
It is.
Is it? Why?
Oh, look, it's just boring for me to say again, but if you look at the weekend, they kept the Waratahs at 37% gain line ball with ball in hand, and yes, they had the red card down in Christchurch, but they defended like men possessed, and I think if they can bring that defensive effort, they're the best in the comp. They've only conceded 7 points in second halves. What if they are going to win? Crusaders are one of the best sides at starting hot. We saw that on the weekend, and they can get ahead and they can take the game away from you before you know it. They need to match that, and if they can match that, and I think at scrum time they'll be okay, but line out time they need to really have a clean night. Sam Whitelock there or not, it doesn't really matter. This Crusaders line out is a threat, not only on their own ball but disrupting ball. But I took a lot of confidence by what Tom Robinson presented. Tucker, you expect it, but Tom obviously plays a number of roles, 6, sometimes 8 for Northland, not always lock, and he got a defensive steal. So they showed enough promise in there. Paul Tito's doing some great work. So I think it's the defence aspect for the Blues that, that's your character, that's, that you can measure a side. I still don't think they would have been happy with the amount of opportunities they had to score points in the weekend in terms of the 22 entries. I think they had 11 for 5 tries. It's better, but knowing the standards that Leon McDonald and that leadership group are setting, I think they feel they still left a lot of points out there. So, I mean, it was 15-3, I think.
Yeah, well, so they
game.
didn't score any points.
They didn't, but again, they had opportunity to. It was the same at Eden Park. They had opportunity to win that game with the amount of time they spent, 22. The Crusaders are good at winning big games. Like, there's no point stepping away from that. They go into this game as favourites. And if you look at the other night, they go in men possessed, but there is becoming quite, there's a lot of uncertainty around their 23 this week, and they've done such a fantastic job to, hang in that fight. And look, it will be a tough challenge and it will be close. But yeah, I just think statistically you can't go away with what the Blues have shown defensively.
I'm kind of surprised that Joey hasn't got a call up at lock. They've lost so many of them. Joey, surely someone's called you.
They saw that ad with him and Mitch Hunt earlier in the year. Their shirts off on the beach.
I'm wrong then, Joe. It's got to embrace the
so you can have a crack at my rig on a beach. They can't come back the other way.
No, look, I'm torn, but I just think with this Crusader side at home, what are they now? 28 playoff games played at home. They haven't lost a single one. Will this be the one? I agree with everything Jip said in terms of the Blues game. Defensively, brilliant. Their scrum, awesome. The one glaringly obvious part of their game where they have had issues, and they had it last year against where the Crusaders just dismantled their line out and they had no plan B. I'm sure they're going to sort that out, Jip.
I think Paul Tito's, by all accounts, like I caught up with Ricky Locatelli, and he's playing some of his best footy, and he credited a hell of a lot to Paul Tito. Obviously new into the squad this year, he knows his lineouts back to front. You would have to think, Joey, I mean, there's not many locks I don't know, or hookers, to be honest, that become coaches and not think of plan A, B and C at lineout time because they have anxiety about it. But on that note though, like, if you look at the weekend and the way the Crusaders started hot, but Fiji and Drua have pretty much been a 60% gain line team. The Crusaders kept them to 40%, which I think shows that their defence is starting to grow. Like, they are getting better combinations that are playing. So if they can put something like that on the Blues can't get their game going if they can't get their big boys across that gain line. And get that quick ball for Christie and co. Even you look at that Reds game, Joey, you and I said, Bodie was at his best against them, and because of that speed, the big boys were getting across the gain line. He's running flat and fast, committing defenders, putting guys in holes. If the Crusaders can deliver the defensive performance they put against the Fiji and Drua, it will make it really hard for the Blues to get over that hurdle of turning that possession and territory into tries.
And that's essentially what they did when they visited Christchurch, right? Their defensive pressure was what neutralised all that. The defensive pressure that the Blues did, but also on the counter side of that, the Crusaders shut down every opportunity. All their guns, all their firepower, that's where the Crusaders always deliver. And I just think, again, that's going to be the real challenge. We want to see, I think we saw more out of the Blues attack on the weekend, and I think they'll take some real confidence out of that. So, look, it's going to be an absolute ding-dong, right? But I'd love to see the Blues take that real point-scoring mindset down there to go, look, we're not going to just try to out-muscle this team. We're going to try and run rings around them, because I still think they've got a little bit, they can match the firepower that the Crusaders have got, if not better at. And you're right about the start. You knock this Crusaders side on the nose, and we know how confident the Blues can be if they can turn some of that pressure into points. That's been their Achilles heel this year. So, look, if they can start hot, man, they're going to put this Crusaders side under some real pressure, and that's going to make for an awesome game.
Let's not forget as well, in the last game, the Blues had bugger all ball. I think it was 60% territory and possession to the Crusaders. But any ball they did have, they kicked away. And if you look at the first game in Eden Park, they didn't kick enough. So you've got to know they're looking at both those games and saying, geez, we've gone too heavy one way each time we've played, and you'll hope that maybe you can go in with every plan under the sun, and I know it's easier said than done, me sitting here, but you've got to still read the pitches that they present, and the Crusaders did a great job last time of sort of just covering that kick space, and Richie Mo'unga came out and said, we're expecting them to be like that, because they had reviewed themselves and knew they'd left too much kick space, if you know what I mean. So it certainly will be interesting in terms of what tactics both sides take. Crusaders, I
know one thing that the Crusaders will be doing, mate, and they'll be coming straight through the front door, as always. That's where they'll be going. Yeah,
well, I was going to say the Crusaders traditionally will just stay to what they're good at, and that's worked for them 28 times finals. And I think it's getting that balance of attack right, and not probably having too much time on D, because D does sap you, it can lift you. But at the back end of these games, defence, if you're making that amount of tackles in the first 20, you're going to pay the price at some point.
We had a question from Kano is King. He said, it would be cool to hear some chat about recovering each week and how they mix in weight training. I'd like to kind of build on that, because that's interesting, but also at playoff time. When you look at the way that they're building this week, the review, the training, the weight training, what does a semi-final week look like?
Joey can jump in from his point of view, but I think as any season goes along, there is less and less, I suppose, body-on-body contact during the weeks, because one, you've got a big injury toll normally, or a little bit walking wounded, but also the work's done. You've actually got the rugby fitness under your belt, so it's about fine-tuning what you want to improve, not making too much change, I don't think, and then probably keeping the week as consistent as possible around weight training and structure of the trainings the same, but that contact, I think, is the biggest change late in the season, is not so much body on body. But I think if you're changing a lot in semi-final week, you're not in your groove. You should be, I suppose, probably pretty consistent.
Yeah, it's just about managing load, Ross. Like, guys will obviously, they're beaten up, so it's probably less is more in those weeks. It's actually getting the energy levels right. Obviously, there's going to be a hell of a lot of excitement naturally, just because you're going into massive final weeks. So it's actually tempering that, making sure guys are probably not doing too much. That's a big thing, because you're so excited to get there. You're thinking, I want to do this, want to do that, but you just got to temper that and make sure you're not doing too much so the energy levels are right. So, yeah, it's getting the balance. Nothing much will change. Guys will obviously be monitored, because, a lot of those, especially the lads that have played big minutes, will be nursing a lot of niggles. So it's just about recouping as much as possible. Recovery will be more the focus, and the mental side of it, as opposed to physically doing too much that week.
The Crusaders, Ethan Blackadder, Zach Gallagher, possibly Richie Mo'unga. There's a number of players there who are, looking a little shaky. Poor old Ethan Blackadder.
Yeah, I was fortunate to speak to him before last week. And man, he goes, I've never been so fizzed for this game, that quarterfinal. And, he was really frustrated with the injury. And, you do feel for him. But sometimes, I don't know about you, Joey, but you always get this period in your career where you just can't stay on the park, and it's really frustrating, but every player seems to have it. I knew when I went through it, I broke my arm, came back too early, broke it straight away, first game back, and then did a disc bulge in my neck, and honestly it was 18 months. I was just like, man, is this ever going to change? So I think he's a pretty resilient bloke, pretty determined to turn his career into something big, which we all know he's capable of, and it's just weathering that storm. And there is, I'd say, even better support around that mental stuff now in these professional environments.
So Joey, what do you do there? As far as a player or a teammate, when you've got a teammate who's suffered from 18 months of injuries, it's not one injury, it's 3 different injuries, what do you do in camp? Because obviously you don't want to go up and go, mate, how you doing today? Is your ankle right?
That's the most annoying thing. You go from one to the other. Especially, I think probably head injuries would, the concussion side of things is the worst. Like when you're coming in and you don't really know when you're going to be back because you're just not feeling right, and everyone's like, every day, how's your head? How are you feeling today? And you're like, mate, same as yesterday, like how long's a piece of string? So that's the hardest bit, I think, is at least with other physical injuries, you can sort of give them a bit of a time frame and you know where you're working to. But the head stuff's really, really tough. So I think it's just giving them space, just connecting with them on a different level. So and I think a lot of teams do that really well now. They don't force them to be, especially with the long-term guys, they're not forcing them to be in the environment for, they do their rehab and then they let them go and do whatever else it might be. It could be some professional development work or whatever else it is, rather than just being stuck there, having to watch and be around the environment so much. That can be really tough mentally, because you're not going to get a chance to get back out there. So, I think they do a really good job of it. But Jim is right around, when do you think it's going to end? Similar thing with me, like shoulder surgery, came back and then had to have a back surgery, and you're like, geez, we're only going to catch a break. And I think with Ethan Blackadder's case, the way he plays the game as well, I think it's just a byproduct of the style of footy players. Like, he is rip, shit and bust. Like, he has a complete disregard for his body, and I think he is going to be in the triage ward a bit throughout his career. But as Jib has said, he's the ultimate professional, super resilient, and he always comes back bigger and stronger and a better rugby player for it. So, and you've got to give these blokes the chance, right, to get right, especially Richard Way. What was it before? I don't know what it is now when the Crusaders don't have him, but it was something like last year when he didn't play, they lost, the majority of those games. So you need that guy. He's so influential to that team.
Mm. So what is the etiquette? You're a young player, comes into a team. Who teaches you the things about, avoiding having that conversation with your teammate who's been injured all the time? Are they kind of etiquettes to get passed from senior players down, or is it just something you learn through experience because he got grumpy with you because you asked him about your head for the 50 millionth time?
I think it's just normal behaviour, no different to you coming in this. Certain personalities that are open for a discussion, and certain personalities that that won't be. So body language is a big thing. But it's also reminding yourself when you are that injured player, it's only because they care that they're asking. They're actually just genuinely caring about you and wanting to know how you're going. But I think players just know. It doesn't even matter if you come in as a young guy. You would have experienced injuries yourself. You have a tendency to understand. But I do think, like, a shoulder's a lot easier. A knee's a lot easier. Where it gets grey is concussion is quite hard because no one can see it. And you sort of, you don't have an answer. Like, a shoulder's like, oh yeah mate, I'm just rehabbing it, hopefully 6 weeks. Yeah. Doc said 6 weeks, whereas head, you're just like, oh, I don't know. And I'm pretty down about it. I don't actually want to be here. So I think medical teams have got a lot better as well at understanding the individuals and saying, actually, I don't think this environment's great for you in your recovery right now. Take some time away, and there'll be other people that probably are wanting to stay away and be recluse, but it's actually really good for them to bring them back into the environment and make them feel included. So I think medical teams have a great knack of managing that now, and managing, I suppose, those players and their fellow teammates, of having the discussion, going, hey guys, this is the situation. We think it's best that you just, go about your normal business. You don't need to overthink it and ask too many questions. All those sorts of things are sort of put in place, not so much from player to player, but probably more medical teams.
Yeah, I suppose, Joe, not to carry on about this for too long, but it's also a good time to learn about the game, I presume. If you're injured all that time, you can take a role within the strategy team. You can learn, so when you come back, you are that extra bit mentally on top of what you were physically.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, and again, that's probably horses for courses, how involved guys want to be in that process. I think there definitely will be guys that you will naturally gravitate towards doing that and wanting to help the team in any way they can. There'll be other guys that don't want to borrow that and they want to help the team out in other ways. So yeah, I think it's just horses for courses around what they can contribute. But as Jib said, I think the first part of a long-term injury, get them away from the environment, freshen them up. Then when you're bringing them back in, it's finding what role they can help the team with, because that gives them a little bit of a greater purpose as well.
I think, like, for the individual that's injured as well, one thing that I used, to the latter part of my career, which I'd wished I'd known earlier, is when I was injured, I would get the training plan and visualise me doing the whole training, and it's almost like it gives you the ability to hit the ground running because your brain feels like it's done it.
Yeah.
And your skill set's not clunky, and you have the ability to sort of cross over. And I just recommend to any player in any sport, the power of visualization is so strong, and you can't always, even like we were saying, you can't always get body on body, whatever situation. So that ability to visualize and feel yourself dominating collisions, and thinking outside of the square around how you areas of your game you want to improve. You can do it scripted, non-scripted. I suppose we can probably get a sports psych on if we want to go too deep on this, but it is a real powerful tool.
We probably should.
Yeah, Kylie Wilson.
Is she she's the person who taught you that?
She was the one that helped me from about probably 26, 27 onwards, and it was that wasn't the only tool she taught, but that really helped with injuries.
And you were writing novels of the perfect James Parsons game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. As you can tell, I'm an intense critter, so when I commit, I fully commit.
You would have been sitting down writing notes about how to dismantle the Crusaders line out this weekend. Yeah.
I was a great student, but also with that comes a lot of questions, so I could be annoying as well.
Right. You're like a mature class
like a real deep understanding. I need to know the real reason I'm doing something.
And everyone else in the training room is like,
oh yeah, that's why I just get my little individual sessions, because the whole team would just be like, is this guy serious? Joking. Of course I read the room better than that.
Well, just to carry on to that theme then on taking apart Crusaders lineouts, as a lineout practitioner yourself, Joey, what would you do if you were the Blues this weekend to prevent what happened last time? What areas of the Blues line-out would you improve, and what areas of the Crusaders line-out would you attack?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Look, I think what the Crusaders do so well defensively is they are forever changing the pitches. So I think you've got to be really fluid in your thinking from a Blues perspective in terms of their attacking line-out. So I think throwing different shapes and variations at the Crusaders works, but also playing a really up-tempo, sort of line-out. So trying to get in as quickly as possible and trusting your lift, because what they love to do is paint you a picture, then shut that down and then go somewhere else to try and defend you, because they sort of guess what you're going to do. So look, there's all sorts of ways to try to skin them. What I'd say is I like them changing the shape of a line-out, and I think we saw some real success with that with the Blues last weekend. And I think the way that they can boost Tom Robinson, man, they get some real height on his with the lift on that guy. He's obviously a fantastic athlete, but defensively he did a fantastic job. And that was, I think, the most impressive part from Egypt in their line-out performance was how good they were defensively against that Taylor side, who we know have a good line-out of themselves. But it will be a little bit stressful because, they don't have the tallest of locks and Tom and James Tucker if they go with that same mix. And Hoskins is obviously a fantastic line-out option. So I'd like to see them shorten it up a bit, but, change the pitches on the Crusaders often enough so that they can't get a flow to their line-out defence.
I think, Akira needs to be acknowledged as well. He's done some great work defensively for not only the All Blacks, but the Blues as well. So they do have enough there defensively. I'm keen to actually ask you, Joey, my thoughts are, it's not about having plan A, B and C. It's once you walk into line, you have that mindset of being there first, because what the Crusaders do so well, both sides of the ball, they get there first, so try to cut off your tempo balls. But then they move late. So in my mind, if you keep your tempos on at all times, Joey, and if you're the caller, if they move out of that space, take the ego out of it, because normally it is the front and we all want back ball. I get that. But is the ball, winning the ball not better than not, going to a 50-50 or 100%? And then if you're going to go to your sets, I think you've got to do a 2-slip, 3-slip policy. I think 1-slip or hooker balls, once you're set, normally play into their game because they move late and they've got those 2 pods. And because they got those two pods, there is space somewhere, but because of that late movement and that explosiveness, I think hooker balls or one slip sometimes get you in trouble because they can come over the top.
Can you explain what one slip means?
Normally it means like I'll go to lift you and then I slip out.
Right.
And so then you'll come forward into the space I was in.
Okay.
And if two slip, obviously two slip out. And then sometimes you work to the back and then the third slip there and then you come forward. But you got to, because, and I like what Joey's saying is because the Crusaders do so much homework on lineouts. Like Sam Whitelock, this is why he's the best in the world at it. He puts his headphones in and he listens for calls, he looks for cues. So if you bring another shaped lineout that he hasn't seen before or they haven't seen before, it gives you, you've got to, they'll work it out during the game because they're that good. Most sides are. But it'll give you a good start. You know, get the confidence going. You'll be able to catch them off guard, catch them a little bit slow because they haven't been reacting to it. But then they will, you know, sort of get used to that. So then it's like change it up on them again. And it's a lot of work, you know, but it is such a key area that if you just don't get it right, man, like, you know, I know we joke about how I say it's one up front, but honestly, you just cannot get your game going without it.
Yeah. Well, actually, what I've noticed recently is it's been run right at the front. Joey, more this year than I think I've ever seen before. The ball from the hooker going to the front man and then back to the hooker has happened again and again and again from
right at the front. That's a real bailout. You know, your lineout's under pressure when you do one of two things. It's either go to the prop at the front, or you go over to either your Lucy or your which is fine. Like that's great. Like that's a great bailout option as well. Like if you need that. But I totally agree, Jip. I don't think the Crusaders have always been so good on a one slip. So one slip being Ross, one guy dummies out, and then you go into that space. They're just so good at all those guys being tuned into that. So you need to actually bring something a little bit different. So I'd imagine, the Fish, Paul Tito, will have a couple of real specials up his sleeve for the start of the game. And I always used to like coming in and showing something different against the Crusaders side to just maybe try to throw their thinking a little bit. Then you get into your rhythm because they'll adjust, like Chipper said, because they're just so good at all that stuff. Like they'll see something and they'll be like, right, this is how we're going to defend that shape. But you've got to sort of be like, they'll go to this defense, so we're going to go to this attack in terms of that shape. So if you bring a new shape, it's going, right, they think that we're going to go to this. It's like a two-card sort of trying to preempt what they're going to do. So, yeah, so they're masters of it, and everyone knows it's coming. But like last year, you know, we all knew that that's where they were going to attack the Blues, and they still managed to come up with a real cunning plan of doing that. But you're right, Akira, that was forgive me for not mentioning him, but that's one part of his game that he has grown so much in. Like he was always like really when we played together in the Māori All Blacks, quite a for an athletic guy, quite a heavy guy felt quite heavy to lift. Whereas I think he's got way more explosive and probably just confidence and going up in the air. Like it's not a natural thing to be getting thrown, 6 foot in the air. So. He's doing really well, and I've been super impressed with the growth in that line out, Jip.
You made me laugh just then because one day I can't remember who, I think it was Tom Donnelly I was giving grief. Like he went up and it was like an awkward lift and he almost like started flapping like a bird as he was going to the ground. And he called me out and he goes, oh, well, you go do it. You've never had to do it. And mate, I was like Angry Birds. I was giving it this one. The old call was sloppy. I was all over the place. So yeah, it's something you definitely have to get used to. And I can imagine I would be a very heavy lift too.
So they threw you up just to give you a crack?
I got 2 lifts. Honestly, I just was so ridiculously cocky that I didn't think it would be that hard. But there's a lot to it. Yeah. There's a lot to it.
And you hadn't skipped leg day either. So you thought you had the explosivity.
I was one and done.
Yeah.
I was one and done. Obviously, the core was used for scrums, not lineouts, but it was funny. It was funny.
Okay, well, the Reds, they were one and done against the Chiefs. They didn't have it in them to beat them a second time, although they gave them a really, really good push. What, Joey, did the Brumbies learn from what the Reds have done against the Chiefs twice that could put them into position to beat the Chiefs in Hamilton this weekend in the semi-final?
Yeah, I thought, obviously Debrasini's selection at 10, there's a reason for that. Obviously his kicking game may be out of hand slightly better than Lower CL, but I think with him and Nick White, they can obviously put that back three of the Chiefs under a hell of a lot of pressure. what I also have enjoyed about the Reds defensively, they're so gritty, but they, keeping men on their feet and making the Chiefs work super hard to try and get around them, which they've done it with ease all year, but the Reds have had a real good ability and a real knack of disrupting their ball. So, look, the Brumbies will take a lot out of that, and I think Nick White and if they go with JKG and Debrasini, then I think they're going to have to be really, really accurate with their kicking. And we always know that Brumbies sides tend to be really good in that position. Nick White's obviously world-class with his box kicking, but it's limiting that back three's opportunity to play that open style, because we know that their athletes, Sean Stevenson, Narawa, Damien McKenzie, if he's at the back, if you get loose on that, they will just punish you, and they can punish you from anywhere. So, yeah, without a doubt, their kicking game, they would have taken something out, would have taken notes of what the Reds did defensively and with their kicks to go, right, how do we limit this and try to suffocate the Chiefs, because they do get frustrated when they're not getting it their own way.
I think as well, you've given me an in, so I'm going to take it. Sean Stevenson, I thought he was great. Like another, in a tough performance, he really stood up and created the opportunities to allow them to win that game. Side point, but I just wanted to mention that. But I think with their kicking game, what the Reds did really well is, statistically, the Chiefs kept them at 40%. It was a big physical collisions game, like, Wilson and Finau were just trying to run through brick walls, but they kept them to 40%. But normally when you get those sorts of numbers, your wingers are high, and it limits your backfield. And I just felt like they manipulated, as Bryn likes to call it, that pendulum. Yeah. And if you see that 50-22 of O'Connor when he puts it behind, Stevenson's just about to come up in the defensive line, and he just puts it, and it didn't give McKenzie enough time to get in around, so they didn't, and that was pure skill from James O'Connor, like really, really well played. But I think someone like Debrasini's got the ability to do that. It's if, like Liner was really good as well. Does Debrasini have an O'Connor? Not sure. Don't know. Tamati Tua, he's not known for his kicking, he's known for his defence and strong carries. So can a Wright play that role? They're going to need three options, because that's where the Reds really took them apart, is while they know the Chiefs are trying to win that physical dominance, it does leave them vulnerable at times in that backfield.
Chiefs still kick more than the Reds, which surprised me when I looked at the stats. So the Chiefs still kick 200 metres more. So
the type of
was
kicks,
a real
though,
battle of,
exactly. So there were a lot of those little attacking kicks.
Yeah.
And crossfield kicks, like if you look at it, like I know a lot of people have come out and gone, 92 kicks, but it's like, were you ever bored during that game? Like they were attacking options. Like in league, I know Andrew Voss has tried to compare it, and it's like, mate, there's a fifth and final tackle where you've got to kick. Like a lot of the numbers are, there's more kicks in league than there are, not 92 obviously, but it was still a very entertaining game of footy.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and it was close.
And 50-22s are exciting, and yes, we stole that from league, but geez, those are great to watch.
Yeah, they are, and generally they're really opportunistic, which is awesome.
And instinct, like you've read something. That's why I'm saying, like, there haven't been a lot of 50-22s, and like to get 3 in a game was seriously impressive.
Yeah. Okay, Joe, so what do the Chiefs need to improve to look a little bit classier than they did on the weekend?
The difference between the Chiefs and the start of the season to where they've got to in terms of their phase playoffs, I think they've gone a little bit away from that. They're kicking in terms of their option taking, great. But are we going to see a little bit more ball in hand against this Brumbies side? Maybe. I'd like to see that. Maybe not. Maybe looking for those attacking options all the time, because I just love them to hold the ball and give those attacking threats that they've got a little bit more time and space, and to see Damien at the line a little bit more, mate.
Yeah, I agree, but if you look at the Brumbies as well, especially early, like they've, on average, I think they conceded 33 on the weekend, but it was 28 points before that game. Defensively, man, they're not where they normally are. So I think sometimes it's just reading those pictures of when to run and when to kick, and I know that sounds so basic, but their back three aren't always, like still learning 15, I feel. And so sometimes that kick space is on and you've actually got to take it. And the Chiefs have shown that they're really good at it. And just as if when wingers are holding back and there's that backfield coverage, it's using the hands or finding that space via the kick. But then wearing them down, I think first initially is going really direct. So that's all going to come, those pitches will all come, probably after 30 minutes. But in that first 30 is really take that direct approach, keep ball in hand like Joey's saying, because it's going to sap the energy and that's going to make it harder to make decisions later in the game. And I think they're a good enough side. And I know we picked the Hurricanes to win last week, but they are a good enough side, especially if they go to their A game, which is up front, which I think was the difference. They went to that when they needed a big player and they got those maul tries. They are definitely a chance.
They're a chance, but an unlikely chance?
Oh, I think it's unlikely. I think that game against the Reds, we've always seen a Chiefs side bounce back if it's been a little bit sloppy, and maybe they got a little bit confident by seeing, and guys having a week off, they didn't quite get it right in terms, but also you have to respect the way the Reds turned up. That was the best game of their season. If they could deliver that every week, they'd be, in top 4.
We've got an All Blacks team being named on the breakdown this week on Sunday, so there's something to tune in on Sky Sport. All Blacks and All Blacks 15. Where would you put Imoni Narawa?
On the wing, obviously.
Yes.
Look, I think his form is, albeit that the chip and chase where he gave a little nudge and didn't get it allowed, but he's just such a threat. Man, we're blessed with so many great outsides at the moment. I just don't know what they're going to do there because they are all in sensational form, and I think the way, when your name gets touted, obviously Imoni and Sean Stevenson, and you carry on that consistent form, I just think that they've got to be there because they haven't gone backwards since Ian Foster said, these are two guys that have really put their hand up in the early rounds. They've actually taken their game to a whole other level. So, yeah, I think those two, well, there or thereabouts, without a doubt, Roscoe. And I don't know at whose expense, because the only guy that I think, obviously Sever Reece isn't going to be there due to injury, but Caleb Clark might be the victim of circumstance there, Jip, for me.
Can they still fit them in, though,
unfortunately?
Even with that? Like if they carry Damien as a 10, they've got Bodie as a 10, Richie as a 10. I suppose Geordie can play 15. I just don't know.
Jordan.
Because there's Leicester, Will Jordan, Mark Talaia. If you go Sean Leicester. And you have a Monet, it's...
Leicester?
Yeah. It's just how that... It's actually how the squad matchup works. It's with Damien and Bodie there, can they pick an out-and-out fullback with Will who can play fullback? Does, that, I'm obviously part of the Sean Stevenson fan club, no doubt about
Certainly
it.
on the board.
But it's, how do they fit an out-and-out 15? Because I know he can play wing, but man, he is playing some great footy out-and-out 15. And maybe someone that they know a lot about may get some more minutes in the 15, and they need to know what Sean can do at that level. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's...
They'll take a risk. Do you think they'll take a risk, Matt? Because let's be honest, if they did give Damien a shot in the 10 jersey and they played Sean at fullback as that chief spine that's been so successful in terms of their attack, do you see them rolling the dice and at the start of the rugby championship to give that a crack? Because are we going to be able to bludgeon the likes of the French or the South Africans to win? We're probably not going to be able to do that to beat them at a World Cup, right? Or the Irish. We're going to have to do something different in terms of our attack. Are those the two guys that could ignite that?
One of the things for me, Joey, is that obviously the All Blacks haven't been that good for a couple of years. And does that affect the ability that you have to trial things when you've only got a very limited number of test matches before a World Cup?
Yeah, I think so. I think history will tell us that the All Blacks selectors have generally been pretty loyal to who's there and who's done a job. And I think our game had, the All Blacks game had come a long way last year. Towards the end of last year, they were playing some pretty good rugby, and they were playing the way they wanted to. So, Look, in terms of your question, what are they? Yeah, where do they go? Are they going to take a risk? I don't think so, and I don't think in a World Cup year they will. I think they'll trust in the guys that they've got there. I would love to see them give Emian and Sean a crack just to see what they could do, because an All Blacks team that's attacking, and I still do believe we've got the best athletes in terms of ball in hand in the world. It's just getting them the right framework to be able to express that, and I don't think we've quite seen that yet. So, yeah, I'd love to see them take a risk, but I don't think they will, Ross, no.
I've got a couple of things I want to get through before we finish off the show. One is that the Springboks love to take a risk every now and then. Take a risk, well, play the mind games, play a clever brand of gamesmanship off the field. Rassie Erasmus has gone and picked up a former Irish international, using the rules that were put in place to create eligibility for the smaller nations of players who are no longer playing for the bigger nations. He's gone and flipped it on his head. Of course it was Rassie, because this is the kind of thing that he does. He's ahead of the game. He's gone and got John Klein, Munster player, and he's brought him into the squad. My question to you is, considering the setup of New Zealand rugby, is New Zealand rugby in a position, because you cannot select All Blacks outside of New Zealand, that they will never be able to make a move like this?
I suppose currently, yeah, under the current framework. I still think it's our biggest weapon. Yeah, is having, and I've said it a number of times, and it's a personal view, but it's just what it does to keep talent coming through the NPC, older talent going back and looking after that sort of growth up until Super. Yes, it doesn't always work, but and there are some players like a Charles Piatel, Stephen Luatua in the prime that you potentially lose, but I think that's the mystique and the unique nature of the black jersey.
I think the other thing about this, Joey, is that it shows just how strong Irish rugby is now. It's their discards that are going to play for other people. That's a big change.
That's a tip. That's what I was just going to say. That's Russie's credit. He's tipping his hat to what they're doing up there, that this guy is damned good enough to make the Springbok side, which is staggering, right? But they're picking from all corners of the world now. They've opened the floodgates, and I agree with Jip around, the All Blacks and retaining, and New Zealand rugby retaining their top talent. They do a fantastic job in that, and there probably is some arguments for guys, but at the moment, the way it is, it does help us keep the big name players here for a long period of time. If those guys were playing, I think the likes of an Aaron Smith or a Beauden Barrett, Bodie's had a sabbatical, but Aaron Smith, until this year, end of this year, where he heads off to Japan. If he was in a Springbok jersey, he probably would have left 5 years ago and been playing up in Japan and still playing for the Springboks. So, that's the real blessing, that we're lucky to be able to retain our talent. So, tip to New Zealand rugby on that. They're doing a great job.
The other one that we've got going on here, as far as final questions before the show finishes, is that we're basically been given a big backhander by Justin Maddock on YouTube. Please send us through your questions on YouTube or on the email to Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz. Justin Maddock says, please stop calling first 5/8 first receiver, or left or right wing, left and right edge. It's just plain lazy. Now, I think what's interesting about this is that it's quite clear that the fans and players are talking a different language when it comes to rugby.
Not really. I don't agree. Because we don't use that in that sense. Like first receiver, first 5 isn't first receiver. No. So 15 becomes a first receiver. So the language is, it doesn't matter if he's got 10, 15, 2, 6, that's the first receiver. Yeah. And the edge is the attacking edge. So normally it's the right edge. It's nothing to do with the right winger. Sometimes he's over on the left wing. That's the right edge, that's the left edge for attack. We're not labelling individuals.
Yeah, so once you're out of the set piece and you're into phase play, Joey, it really doesn't matter what number is on your back.
But do you understand?
Exactly.
Sorry, but
it's ridiculous.
The edge, the right edge is not a player.
Yes.
Like first receiver is an individual player. Yeah. The right edge is where you're attacking.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to find space.
Yeah.
Trying to attack the right edge. Yeah, I just think, obviously.
It's two different things. When I read that, I was like, it's fair. We obviously haven't made it clear enough that we're not talking about.
I'd be honoured as the first receiver as a lock to be called the first 5'8" every time I talk. Well,
you thought that anyway.
Say compliment, like far out.
Yeah. This first 5 over here doesn't have many kicking options. He's just putting his head down and going through.
Yeah, he's not a triple threat, mate.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, when you look at it and you go, okay, well, that's two different parts of the game. There's one when you start and one once you're into phase play, and I suppose that's something for us to give clarity on, but I suppose it's also a matter of the fans going, okay, actually, well, it's unscripted after that. It's just literally the role you're playing within your setup, not your jersey. So. And
I think, back in the day, the first 5 was always the first receiver, know, and then these forward pods became a thing, and then the game's just always evolving. 15 has to play that dual playmaker role. And I actually think it's a fair question because, especially probably looking at Bryn and myself, we probably haven't articulated why.
Yep.
So now we have.
Mate, always accountable.
Always accountable.
Always accountable. I was wanting to take a crack, but
yeah, you got to.
So on that note, please get in touch with us. Whether it's a criticism or a question, we really want to talk about it, engage with you. So please get in touch with us. Email Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz or in the YouTube comment section. There's always a few curly ones in there. And if we haven't answered your questions yet, I've got a piece of paper here which says viewer questions for later. And I'll bring them up as appropriate as the season goes on. We've still got another 20-odd episodes, so there's plenty of time to get through them as the international season and the World Cup comes up. So that's Aotearoa Rugby Pod for this week. Before we go, quick one-word answers. Predictions. Crusaders. But Blues and Chiefs?
Yep.
Blues and Chiefs in the final in Hamilton. Joey.
Crusaders, Chiefs.
Crusaders, Chiefs in Hamilton.
And it's going to be the Crusaders by a whisker. Sorry, Jip.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why I'm sitting 52nd on the tipping.
Yeah.
Because, I pick far too much with my heart. I could not be part of the Blues at Umlai, and I suppose John O'Farrell just played for them, so no, I'm joking.
Before we go, quick congratulations to Lim's Jerseys, who topped our tipping comp through the regular season.
Impressive.
Well done, very high score, 72. You're right up near the top of the 5,000 odd people in the overall tipping comp and right at the top of the 500 in our league. So we'll be in touch with you. And we'll get you on the show as soon as the Super Rugby season is over, and we'll have a chat about what you've made of it, how you make your picks, and what you think is going to come in the season ahead. So thank you very much to Lim's Jerseys. I don't know what your real name is, but congratulations. Apparently I can get the email address and I'll get in touch with you. So thank you, mate. Thank you, Chipper.
Cheers.
Thanks again, Joey. Great on the SOS call. Appreciate it.
Leonard, love your work.
And we'll catch you all again next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.